In the deep quiet of a Georgia back road, silence is often the loudest warning. Deputy Harlan Voss believed his badge gave him the power of a king in his small county. He thought he could ruin lives for sport, burying the truth under falsified reports and planted evidence. He had done it many times before. But on a humid Tuesday night, Voss made the mistake of judging two men by the color of their skin and the civilian clothes on their backs. He didn't know he had just handcuffed two of the United States Navy's most lethal assets. He didn't know that silence wasn't fear. It was discipline. And he certainly didn't know that the storm coming for him wore stars on its collar. When the courtroom doors opened, it wasn't justice walking in. It was a reckoning. The humidity in Shelby County hung thick enough to chew on. It was late at night, and Highway 9 was a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by the encroaching pines. For Deputy Harlan Voss, this was hunting hour. Voss sat in his cruiser, tucked behind a decaying billboard advertising a peach stand that had closed long ago. He killed the headlights, letting the darkness of the interceptor merge with the shadows. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee, his eyes scanning the radar gun. Voss was a man of simple pleasures. He liked his coffee black, his authority absolute, and his quota filled early. He wasn't just a lawman. In his mind, he was the gatekeeper of Shelby County, and he didn't like visitors who didn't fit the profile. A pair of headlights cut through the gloom. Xenon beams, expensive. Voss sat up straighter. The radar chirped. 62 in a 55. Hardly a crime, but in Shelby County, it was probable cause. As the car passed, a black Chevy Tahoe with out-of-state plates. Voss squinted. Tinted windows. He couldn't see inside, and that bothered him. He flicked the switch. The red and blue strobe lights erupted, shattering the peace of the night. He peeled out of the gravel trap, tires spitting stones, and gunned the engine to close the gap. Inside the Tahoe, the atmosphere was markedly different. "You're 5 over, Reid," Darius said, his voice a low rumble from the passenger seat. He didn't look up from the tablet in his lap, where he was reviewing logistics for an upcoming training cycle in Virginia. Reid Cole, hands at 10 and 2, glanced at the rearview mirror. Speed limit dropped back there. I adjusted. He was waiting. "Trap," Kai muttered. "Local law enforcement board on a Tuesday. Keep it cool, hands visible. We don't need a hassle." "We're due at Little Creek by 0800, Reid said. He eased the Tahoe to the shoulder, the gravel crunching beneath the heavy tires. He rolled all 4 windows down immediately. A habit from training, but also a survival tactic for 2 black men driving through the rural South at midnight. He turned on the dome light and placed his hands on the top of the steering wheel. Deputy Voss pulled up behind them, blinding them with his spotlight. He took his time getting out, adjusting his belt, tapping the butt of his service weapon. He walked with the swagger of a man who knew he held all the cards. He approached the passenger side first, flashing his heavy maglite directly into Kai's face. "Evening," Voss said, though it sounded more like a challenge than a greeting. "Good evening, Deputy," Kai replied, squinting against the beam but not flinching. "You all in a hurry?" "No, sir." "Just heading up to Virginia," Reid answered from the driver's seat. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had negotiated with Afghan warlords and diffused underwater explosives. This deputy didn't scare him, but he knew the danger the man represented. Voss moved his light around the interior. Clean, too clean. No fast food wrappers, no mess. Just 2 large men, fit, tight t-shirts, tactical watches. "License and registration," Voss commanded, moving around to the driver's side. Reid moved slowly. "It's in the center console, Deputy. I'm going to reach for it now. Do it slowly." Voss snapped, his hand hovering near his holster. Reid handed over his driver's license. It was a standard South Carolina license. He didn't hand over his military ID yet. Standard procedure for them was to keep a low profile unless necessary. Voss looked at the license, then at Reid. "Mr. Cole, you boys look like you lift weights. You play ball or something?" "Something like that," Reid said neutrally. Voss sneered. He didn't like the lack of fear. Usually people stuttered, they begged. These two sat there like stone statues. It felt disrespectful. "Step out of the car," Voss said. "Is there a problem, Deputy?" Reid asked. "I smell marijuana." Voss lied. It was effortless for him. The word slipped out as easily as breathing. He had used that line many times this month. It bypassed the Fourth Amendment like a master key. Reid and Kai exchanged a microscopic look. They were both clean living. Neither had touched a drug in their lives. The Navy tested them monthly. They knew exactly what this was. "There are no drugs in this vehicle, Deputy," Kai said. "I said, step out of the car." Voss shouted, escalating the volume to establish dominance. "Both of you, hands on the hood now." Reid sighed internally. "Do as he says, Kai." They exited the vehicle. Even in the dim light of the cruiser, their size became apparent. Reid was 6'2", lean and wired. Kai was 6'4", a wall of muscle. Standing next to them, Deputy Voss looked like a child wearing his father's uniform. That size difference only made Voss more aggressive. Fear transmuted into anger. "Spread 'em!" Voss kicked Reid's ankles apart. He patted him down roughly, his hands searching for anything he could use. He found nothing but a wallet and a phone. He moved to Kai. "You got weapons on you? Guns? Knives?" "No, sir," Kai said. Voss finished the pat-down and stepped back, hand on his gun. "I'm searching the vehicle." "I don't consent to a search," Reid said clearly. "And frankly, Deputy, you're mistaken about the smell." Voss laughed, a dry, humorless bark. "You don't consent. You think you're a lawyer, boy. I have probable cause. Stand there and don't move, or I will light you up." Voss dove into the car. He tore through the glove box. He ripped up the floor mats. He found nothing. Frustration began to mount. If he let them go now, he'd look weak. He'd be the cop who got told no by 2 out-of-towners. His ego couldn't take the bruise. He reached into his own vest pocket. A small twisted baggie of white powder sat there, his insurance policy. He leaned into the back seat near a duffel bag and wedged the baggie between the seat cushions. He pulled back out, holding the baggie up in the spotlight beam like a trophy. "Well, well, well," Voss smirked, the adrenaline of the bust hitting him. "No drugs, huh? Cocaine? Meth? Looks like a felony to me." Reid looked at the baggie. His heart rate didn't jump. His mind went into combat mode. Assess, analyze, act. "That is not ours," Reid said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. "Deputy, look at the dashboard camera. Look at your body cam. You know that's not ours. Stop resisting." Voss screamed, seeing his opening. He lunged at Reid, grabbing his wrist to slap on cuffs. "You're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute." Reid didn't resist, but his body was rigid. It was like trying to handcuff a steel beam. Voss had to use all his weight to wrench Reid's arm behind his back. "Kai, stay calm," Reid commanded. "I'm calm, Kai said, his eyes tracking Voss with the intensity of a sniper. Voss cuffed them both, shoving them roughly toward the back of his cruiser. "You boys picked the wrong county to run your hustle. I own this highway." As Voss slammed the door, shutting them in the cramped cage, Reid leaned his head back against the plexiglass. "He planted it," Kai whispered. "I know," Reid replied. "We need to call the XO." "Not yet," Reid said, watching Voss laughing into his radio in the front seat. "Let him dig the hole. Let him dig it deep." The holding cell at the Shelby County Sheriff's Department smelled of industrial bleach, stale urine, and despair. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a headache-inducing hum that flickered every few seconds. Deputy Voss marched Reid and Kai through the booking area like prize cattle. He was loud, boasting to the night shift sergeant, a tired-looking man named Boone with coffee stains on his shirt. "Got 'em on Highway 9. Voss bragged, tossing the baggie of powder onto the counter. "High rollers, big SUV. Thought they could breeze through my town with a stash of blow." Sergeant Boone looked at the two men. He saw their posture. Most drunks and dealers slouched. They leaned. They looked at the floor or glared with wild eyes. These two stood at parade rest, feet shoulder-width apart, hands behind their backs, even though the cuffs had been removed. They looked professional. "Name?" Boone asked Reid. "Reid Cole." "Occupation?" Reid paused. "Government employee." Voss snorted from the corner where he was filling out the arrest report. "Government employee? What? You work at the DMV? You a mailman?" "Something like that," Reid said. "And you?" Boone asked Kai. "Kai Darius." "Same. Empty your pockets." Boone sighed. They placed their items into the grey plastic trays, wallets, keys, loose change, and then their IDs. Reid placed his wallet on the counter. He opened it to remove his driver's license again, and for a split second, the gold foil of his Department of Defense identification card caught the light. Voss walked over and snatched the wallet. "Let's see who you really are." He pulled out the military ID. He looked at it, then looked at Reid. "Navy." Voss laughed. "You got to be kidding me. You stole this, or is it a fake? I've seen better fakes in a high school cafeteria." "It's real, Deputy," Reid said. Voss threw the ID back into the tray with a clatter. "Stolen valor, too. Add it to the list, Boone. Impersonating military personnel. These thugs aren't Navy. Look at them." To Voss, a Navy SEAL looked like the guys in the movies. Charlie Sheen, or some grizzled white guy with a beard. He couldn't reconcile the image of these two clean-cut black men with his narrow worldview of special operations. It was cognitive dissonance fueled by prejudice. "Phone call?" Kai asked. "Systems down," Voss said quickly, cutting off Boone, who was about to point to the phone on the wall. "You get a call when we process you, and that's going to take a while. I got to weigh this evidence. I got to write this report. You sit in the tank and think about your life choices." They were led to a cell at the end of the block. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in the concrete box. Once they were alone, Kai sat on the metal bench, checking his wrists. The cuffs had been tight enough to bruise, but he ignored the pain. "He thinks the IDs are fake," Kai said, shaking his head. "He's not running our socials. If he ran our socials properly or checked the DoD database, red flags would be popping up on every screen in this building." "He's lazy," Reid observed, pacing the small cell. 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. "He's comfortable. He thinks we're nobody. He's going to file the report, go home, sleep like a baby, and wait for the arraignment in a couple days." "A couple days?" Kai raised an eyebrow. "We miss the transport to Virginia tomorrow. We're AWOL." "No." Reid stopped pacing. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the cell. A small red light blinking. "We're not AWOL. We're detained. And when we don't check in at 0800, Lieutenant Commander Sloan is going to check the GPS on the rental. Then he's going to check our phones." "My phone is off," Kai said. "Mine isn't." Reid smiled slightly. "I have a background app running. Find My Device is active. They'll see us sitting in a sheriff's department in Georgia." Kai leaned back, closing his eyes. "You think they'll send a JAG?" Reid chuckled, a dark, low sound. "Sloan? No. Sloan will tell the old man. And you know how Admiral Harlan gets when his boys are messed with." "Harlan," Kai whistled softly. "Rear Admiral Vance. The hammer." "Harlan. That man would invade a small country to get his dry cleaning back. If he finds out a corrupt county cop locked us up on bogus charges." "Exactly." Reid sat down next to Kai. "We just have to wait. We endure. We don't give them anything. No outbursts, no resistance. We give them exactly enough rope to hang themselves." Meanwhile, in the front office, Deputy Harlan Voss was feeling triumphant. He typed up his report, embellishing every detail. Suspects were belligerent. Suspects made furtive movements. Suspects appeared under the influence. He logged the baggie of powder into evidence, marking it "found in suspect vehicle." He ignored the nagging feeling in his gut about the military IDs. He had arrested plenty of guys claiming to be vets to get out of a ticket. It was always a lie. And even if they were in the Navy, what were they? Cooks, mechanics, nobody important. Nobody who could touch him here in Shelby County. He finished his paperwork, poured another cup of coffee and leaned back in his chair. "Good catch, Boone," he whispered to himself, using his high school nickname, making the streets safe. He had no idea that far away, inside a secure facility at Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, a computer monitor had just flagged 2 high-priority assets as stationary, non-responsive, and he had no idea that a phone was ringing on the bedside table of one of the most feared men in the United States Navy. The sun rose over Virginia Beach with a deceptive calm. At Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, inside the Tactical Operations Center for Naval Special Warfare Group 2, the air was chilled and smelled of ozone and floor wax. Lieutenant Commander Reid Sloan stood before a bank of monitors, his coffee mug arrested halfway to his mouth. He stared at the screen labeled Logistics Team 4 Transit. The time was late. "Status on Cole and Darius?" Sloan asked, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. A petty officer second class typed, fingers flying across a mechanical keyboard, didn't look up. "Negative contact, sir. They were scheduled to report for gear stowage at 0800. Phones are going straight to voicemail." Sloan set the mug down. Cole and Darius were not the type of men who overslept. They were Tier 1 operators. If they were late, they were either dead or detained. "Ping the vehicle," Sloan ordered. "Already on it, sir," the petty officer replied. A map of the eastern seaboard flickered onto the main screen. A single red dot pulsed in the rural expanse of Georgia. "Signal is stationary. Location: Shelby County Sheriff's Department, Impound Lot B. Coordinates confirm the vehicle has been there since early morning." Sloan's jaw tightened. "Get the Sheriff's Department on the line now." 30 seconds later, the phone rang in the Shelby County Dispatch Office. Brenda, a dispatcher who had been working the desk for many years and had the patience of a caffeinated hornet, picked up. "Shelby County Sheriff," she drawled, popping a piece of gum. "This is Lieutenant Commander Sloan with the United States Navy," Sloan said, his tone clipped and professional. "I am inquiring about 2 personnel who I believe are currently in your custody. Reid Cole and Kai Darius." Brenda rolled her eyes. She hated the federal types. They always sounded so self-important. "We got a lot of folks in custody. Honey, you'll have to call back when the sheriff gets in at 9. Ma'am, this is a matter of national security urgency. I need to confirm if they are booked. Look, Commander whatever." Brenda sighed, checking the digital log on her screen. "Yeah, I see them. Booked last night by Deputy Voss. Drug trafficking. Possession with intent. Resisting arrest. They're in the hole. No calls." Sloan closed his eyes for a brief second. Drug trafficking. The idea was so ludicrous it was almost funny. Reid Cole was a deacon in his church. Kai Darius treated his body like a temple. "I need to speak to them immediately," Sloan said. "Like I said," Brenda snapped. "No calls until arraignment. Judge sits tomorrow morning. You can call a lawyer then." She hung up. Sloan stared at the receiver. He slowly placed it back in the cradle. The calm in the room evaporated. "Sir," the petty officer asked. "Pack a bag, Peterson," Sloan said, grabbing his cap, "and get Admiral Harlan on the secure line. Wake him up if you have to. Rear Admiral Vance, the Hammer." Harlan was not asleep. He was currently on his 3rd mile of a morning run around the perimeter of his estate. A man of 55 who ran with the stamina of a 20-year-old. When his aide handed him the secure satellite phone, he didn't stop running. "Harlan!" he barked, his breathing rhythmic and controlled. "Admiral, it's Sloan. We have a Situation Charlie in Georgia." Harlan stopped. Situation Charlie meant compromised personnel. "Go." Cole and Darius detained in Shelby County. Local sheriff. Charges are drug trafficking and resisting. Dispatch hung up on me. They're holding them incommunicado. Harlan wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. His grey eyes, usually cold and calculating, ignited with a terrifying heat. Reid Cole had saved Harlan's son's life in the Korengal Valley. Kai Darius was the best breacher in the fleet. These weren't just subordinates. They were his Spartans. "Drug trafficking," Harlan repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Someone is playing games, Ryder. Local deputy named Voss. Sounds like a speed trap gone wrong, sir. They're throwing the book to cover a bad stop. Prepare the Gulf Stream, Harlan ordered, his voice dropping to a low growl that made Sloane's spine straighten even over the phone. I want the JAG Corps senior litigator Captain Lang on that plane. I want a full scrub of Deputy Voss's service record by the time wheels are up. And Ryder, sir, call the base commander at Kings Bay. I want a convoy of SUVs waiting for us at the nearest airstrip. We are not going there to negotiate. We are going there to extract. Aye, sir. Harlan ended the call. He looked at the sunrise, usually a source of peace. Today, it looked like fire. He turned and sprinted back toward his house. He had a uniform to put on, his service dress whites. He wanted to make sure that when he walked into that podunk courtroom, he looked like the wrath of God. Back in Shelby County, the atmosphere was jubilant for Deputy Harlan Voss. The morning sun was baking the asphalt outside, but inside the air-conditioned office, Voss was holding court. He sat on the edge of a desk, recounting the arrest to two rookie deputies who looked at him with hero worship in their eyes. So there I was, Voss said, gesturing with a half-eaten donut. Dark highway, no backup. Two giants in the car. I see the movement. Cole reaching for something under the seat. Could have been a Glock, could have been a shotgun. I didn't flinch. I ripped that door open and dragged him out. You dragged him out? One rookie asked, wide-eyed. That guy is huge. It's all about leverage, kid. Voss lied smoothly. And fear. They smell it on you if you're weak. I looked him in the eye and he folded. Found the blow hidden in the back seat. They thought they were slick. District Attorney Nolan Larry Thorne walked in. Thorne was a man who wore suits that looked too shiny and smiled with too many teeth. He was up for re-election soon, and a high-profile drug bust of two out-of-towners was exactly the kind of red meat his voters loved. Harlan. Thorne boomed, shaking Voss's hand. I saw the report. Fantastic work. 2 kilos. That's a headline. It was a baggie, Larry, but we can weigh the packaging. Voss winked. Possession with intent. Thorne nodded eagerly. I'm going to ask for the maximum. No bail. Flight risk. We'll seize the vehicle, seize the cash, and send them to the state pen for many years. Who are they? Some gang from DC? Claimed to be Navy, Voss scoffed. Had fake IDs and everything. Probably stolen. Thorne frowned slightly. You checked the IDs? Didn't need to. I know a fake when I see one. Besides, real Navy guys don't run drugs through my town. Fair enough. Thorne shrugged, dismissing the concern. Arraignment is at 10 a.m. Judge Calloway is presiding. You know how he feels about drug runners. Judge Calloway was old, half-deaf, and believed that anyone standing before his bench was guilty of something. It was, as Voss had predicted, a slam dunk. Down in the holding cell, the mood was radically different. Reid and Kai had not slept. They sat on the floor, backs against the cold cinder blocks, meditating. To the casual observer, they looked defeated. To a trained eye, they were conserving energy. Wheels, Kai whispered, glancing at the sunlight creeping across the floor. The wheels are turning. Voss came by an hour ago, Reid said softly. Tried to get me to sign a confession in exchange for a lighter sentence. He turned off the audio recording for that part. Sloppy, Kai noted. He's confident. He thinks we're alone. Reid stood up and stretched, his joints popping. He doesn't understand the ecosystem he just stepped into. He thinks he's the shark. He doesn't know he's just a remora attached to a whale. And the orcas are coming. At 9:55, a bailiff came to the cell door. Cole, Darius, let's go. Court time. They were shackled, hand and foot, and led through the underground tunnel connecting the jail to the courthouse. They emerged into a courtroom that smelled of old wood and floor polish. It was a small room, typical of rural Georgia, with a gallery full of locals bored and looking for entertainment. Deputy Voss stood near the prosecution table, chest puffed out, thumb hooked in his belt. He smirked as the two SEALs were led to the defendant's table. There was no public defender present yet. The court-appointed lawyer was running late as usual. Judge Calloway banged his gavel. Order. Order. Docket number 445B. State of Georgia, versus Reid and Darius. The District Attorney Thorne stood up, buttoning his jacket. Ready for the people, Your Honor. Defendants, you are charged with felony possession of a controlled substance, resisting arrest, and impersonating military personnel. The judge droned, reading over his spectacles. How do you plead? Reid stood up. The chains rattled. He looked distinct, calm, and terrifyingly composed. Your Honor, Reid said, his voice projecting clearly to the back of the room without shouting. We have not been allowed counsel. We have been denied our right to a phone call. And we would like to inform the court that these proceedings are currently being monitored. Judge Calloway looked up, confused. Monitored by who? Sit down, son, or I'll hold you in contempt. By the Department of the Navy, sir, Reid said politely. Voss laughed out loud. Your Honor, they're still keeping up the act. Delusional. Silence. The judge snapped at Voss, then turned his glare to Reid. I don't care if you're monitored by the ghost of Christmas past. You are in my courtroom now. Mr. Thorne, regarding bail, the state requests remand, Your Honor, Thorne said. High flight risk, no local ties, significant quantity of narcotics. Granted, the judge said, banging the gavel. Remanded to custody until boom. The double doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They were thrown wide with a force that rattled the window panes. Silence descended instantly. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was not a lawyer. It was a phalanx. At the front stood a man in a pristine white uniform. The high collar choked tight, the shoulder boards bearing the 2 silver stars of a rear admiral. His chest was a kaleidoscope of ribbons. Legion of Merit, Bronze Star with V, Purple Heart. He wore his cover, hat tucked under his left arm. Behind him were 4 men in dark suits with earpieces. Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS agents, and flanking them were 2 uniformed JAG officers carrying briefcases that looked like weapons. Rear Admiral Vance Harlan didn't walk. He advanced. His boots struck the wooden floor with a cadence that sounded like a war drum. He walked straight down the center aisle, ignoring the bailiff, who half rose to stop him, and then wisely sat back down. Deputy Voss felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. The air in the room seemed to have been sucked out. Harlan stopped at the bar, the wooden railing separating the gallery from the court. He looked at the judge, then slowly turned his head to look at Deputy Voss. The look was not angry. It was dismissive, the way a man looks at a cockroach before stepping on it. Who are you? Judge Calloway sputtered, his authority faltering for the first time in many years. You can't just barge in here. Harlan turned back to the judge. His voice was calm, deep, and carried the weight of absolute command. I am Rear Admiral Vance Harlan, commander of Naval Special Warfare Group 2, he said. He pointed a gloved finger at the 2 men in orange jumpsuits. And you are holding my assets. The district attorney, Thorne, tried to salvage the situation. Admiral, with all due respect, this is a state matter. These men are drug traffickers. Harlan laughed. It was a terrifying sound. Drug traffickers. Harlan reached out, and one of the JAG officers slapped a file into his hand. Harlan slammed the file onto the defense table. Reid holds a top-secret/SCI sensitive compartmented information clearance. He undergoes random urinalysis monthly. His last test was negative. Darius is a decorated combat veteran with 0 disciplinary infractions in many years of service. Harlan turned to Voss. The deputy shrank back against the wall. And you, Harlan said, his voice dropping to a whisper that echoed in the silent room. You are Deputy Harlan Voss. 3 internal affairs complaints for excessive force, 2 for falsifying evidence, all dismissed by your internal review. But you aren't under internal review anymore, Deputy. I found the drugs. Voss stammered, his face pale. I found them in the car. We know, Harlan said. We also know that your body camera was manually deactivated for 14 seconds before you found the drugs. We know that the baggie you submitted has a batch number that matches a seizure from a meth lab bust you conducted. A bust where 20 grams went missing from the evidence locker. The courtroom gasped. The judge looked at the DA. The DA looked at the floor. How? How do you know that? Voss whispered. Because, Deputy. Harlan stepped through the gate, entering the well of the court. The United States Navy does not guess. We verify. He turned to the NCIS agents. Secure the evidence. Secure the recording of this proceeding. He looked up at the judge. Your Honor, I am taking custody of these men under the purview of the Uniform Code of Military Justice for immediate debriefing. If you have an issue with that, you can take it up with the Secretary of the Navy. He is currently on hold online one of my aides' phone outside. Harlan walked over to Reid and Kai. He nodded once. At ease, gentlemen, Harlan said. Ride's here. Kai grinned, the first emotion he had shown in many hours. Took you long enough, sir. Traffic was a bear, Harlan replied. But the drama was far from over. Voss, cornered and panicking, made the worst decision of his life. He saw his career, his pension, and his freedom dissolving. He fell back on the only thing he knew, force. You can't take them, Voss shouted, his hand dropping to his service weapon. This is my jurisdiction. I am the law here. The NCIS agents moved with a blur of speed, drawing their weapons, but they didn't need to fire. Reid Cole, despite the shackles on his wrists and ankles, moved. It was a pivot, a shift of weight, and a shoulder check that hit Voss like a freight train. The deputy flew backward, crashing into the prosecution table, his gun skittering across the floor. Voss lay there, gasping for air, looking up at the towering figure of the Admiral standing over him. You were the law, Harlan corrected him, looking down with icy contempt. Now you're just a suspect. Harlan turned to the NCIS lead agent. Agent Kane, arrest Deputy Voss for federal obstruction of justice, filing false reports, and kidnapping of federal agents. Read him his rights. Use the small cuffs. He has small hands. As the agents hauled the screaming Voss to his feet, Admiral Harlan looked at the judge. We're done here, Harlan said. But as they turned to leave, the courtroom doors opened again. This time it wasn't the Navy. It was a camera crew. The video that was about to be recorded would change everything. The camera crew that had burst into the courtroom wasn't national news. Not yet. It was a local freelance stringer named Mia Lang, a woman with a cracked iPhone screen, a battered Canon DSLR, and a grudge. She had been investigating the Shelby County Sheriff's Department ever since her younger brother had been harassed into a false confession by Deputy Voss. She had been waiting for the slip-up. She never imagined the slip-up would come in the form of 2 Navy SEALs and a rear admiral. She caught it all. The shutter of her camera clicked like a machine gun as NCIS agents hoisted Voss off the floor. She recorded the audio of Admiral Harlan dressing down the judge. She captured the look of absolute hollow terror in Voss's eyes as the handcuffs, real federal steel, not the cheap county issue, clicked around his wrists. Get that camera out of here. Sheriff Ryder, who had just arrived at the courthouse in a panic, shouted from the back. He was a portly man with a face like a bulldog, and right now he was sweating through his tan uniform. Let her film. Admiral Harlan's voice cut through the chaos. He didn't even turn to look at the sheriff. He just signaled his JAG officers to collect the files. The Navy believes in transparency, unlike, it seems, Shelby County. The scene outside the courthouse was a spectacle of tactical dominance. The sleepy town square, usually occupied by a few pigeons and old men playing checkers, was now a parking lot for black SUVs with government plates. 2 Naval Military Police, MPs, stood guard by the Tahoe that had been towed to the impound lot, ensuring no more evidence could be planted. Inside the holding area, Voss was separated from the general population. He was placed in an interrogation room that NCIS had commandeered. The local deputies, men Voss had drank beers with, joked with, and bullied for years, wouldn't look him in the eye. They scurried past the open door, terrified that the federal wrath would spill over onto them. Voss sat at the metal table, his hands cuffed to the chair loop. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a cold, sick dread. He looked up as the door opened. He expected a lawyer. Instead, Agent Kane walked in, carrying a thick accordion folder. He slammed it onto the table. The sound made Voss flinch. You have the right to remain silent, Kane said, sitting down and opening the folder. "And frankly, Harlan, I recommend you use it because every word you speak is just another nail in a coffin that is already nailed shut." "I want a deal," Voss croaked. His throat was dry. "I can give you names. I can give you the dealers." Kane laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Dealers? You think we care about low-level drug dealers right now? Harlan, you kidnapped 2 Tier 1 operators. Do you know what Reid Cole does for a living?" Voss shook his head, staring at the table. "He specializes in hostage rescue," Kane said, leaning in. "He pulls innocent people out of hellholes, and you tried to put him in one. But that's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is the search warrant currently being executed at your residence." Voss's heart stopped. "My house." "We found the rest of the cocaine," Kane said, ticking off points on his fingers. "Hidden in a hollowed-out spare tire in your garage. We also found the cash, 40,000 in unmarked bills. That's a lot of overtime pay for a deputy, isn't it?" Voss felt the room spinning. That money was his retirement fund. Skimmed off busts, bribes from local traffickers to look the other way. He had built a fortress of corruption, brick by brick, thinking the walls were opaque. He didn't realize he had been living in a glass house and the Navy had just thrown a boulder through it. "And here's the twist, Harlan," Kane said, his voice dropping to a conversational tone. "We ran the ballistics on the stolen guns you've logged into evidence over the last few years. 3 of them match weapons used in unsolved homicides in Atlanta. You've been taking murder weapons off the street and selling them back to gangs, haven't you?" Voss began to weep. It was a pathetic, snivelling sound. The bully, stripped of his badge and his gun, was nothing but a frightened child. While Voss was melting down, the scene at the sheriff's office was even more chaotic. Admiral Harlan had set up a temporary command post in the sheriff's own office. Sheriff Ryder stood by the window, watching his career evaporate. "Admiral, surely we can handle this internally," Ryder pleaded. "Voss is a bad apple. I had no idea. We'll fire him. We'll charge him." Harlan looked up from a laptop where he was reviewing the dashcam footage from the night before. "Sheriff, you signed off on 42 arrest reports by Deputy Voss in the last year that contained identical language, furtive movements, smell of marijuana. You didn't just have a bad apple, you were running an orchard of them. And you watered the trees." Harlan stood up, smoothing his dress whites. "I've just gotten off the phone with the governor of Georgia. The GBI is taking over this department effective immediately. Your deputies are being relieved of duty pending a federal audit, and you, Sheriff, are going to sit in that chair and not touch a single piece of paper until the FBI arrives. If you shred so much as a post-it note, I will personally ensure you serve time in Leavenworth." Outside, the sun was high in the sky. Reid Cole and Darius walked out of the courthouse, free men. They were still wearing the orange jumpsuits. Their civilian clothes were being processed for trace evidence, but they wore them like armor. Mia Lang was there. She raised her camera, but then lowered it. She walked up to them. "I'm sorry," she said, "for what happened to you." Reid looked at her. He saw the fatigue in her eyes, the hunger for truth. "Don't be sorry, Mom. Just make sure you tell the story right." "I will," she promised. "Tell them," Kai added, his voice deep and resonant, "that the badge is a shield, not a sword. And when you use it to cut people, eventually you get cut back. They got into the waiting Navy SUV." As the door closed, Reid looked back at the courthouse. He saw Deputy Voss being led out the side door by NCIS agents, a jacket thrown over his head to hide his face. "He looks smaller," Reid noted. "They always do," Kai replied. "When you take away the fear they create, there's nothing left inside." The video hit YouTube in the afternoon. By evening, it had millions of views. By the next morning, it was the lead story on every cable news network in America. The title was simple: "Corrupt Deputy Arrests Navy SEALs, Regrets It Immediately." The footage was cinematic gold. The contrast between the stoic, disciplined silence of Cole and Darius and the erratic, aggressive shouting of Voss was stark. But the climax, the doors bursting open, Admiral Harlan marching in like the avatar of retribution. That was the moment that galvanized the nation. Comments flooded in by the tens of thousands. The way he said, "You are holding my assets," gave me chills. Finally, a bully gets punched back. I live in Shelby County. Voss did this to my cousin. Thank God for the Navy. The internet sleuths went to work. Within a day, Voss's entire digital life was dissected. His racist Facebook memes, his connection to a local towing company that overcharged impounded cars, a kickback scheme, his high school bullying record. It all came out. But the hard karma was just beginning. District Attorney Nolan Thorne tried to hold a press conference to distance himself from Voss. He stood on the courthouse steps, sweating under the glare of national media. "I am shocked and appalled by the actions of Deputy Voss," Thorne lied into the microphones. "This office has always stood for integrity." Mr. Thorne, a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, shouted, "We have emails leaked by a whistleblower in the sheriff's department. They show you instructing Voss to target out-of-state plates to boost revenue for the county. How do you explain that?" Thorne's face went ashen. He stammered, turned, and ran back inside the courthouse. Later, he would be indicted on racketeering charges, along with the sheriff and 3 other deputies. The Department of Justice didn't just clean house. They fumigated the foundation. For Harlan Voss, the reality of his new life was setting in. He was denied bail. The federal judge, a stern woman named Judge Patel, who had zero patience for law enforcement corruption, declared him a danger to the community. He was transferred to a federal holding facility in Atlanta to await trial. Because of his status as a former cop, he was placed in protective custody, PC. But in prison, news travels through the vents. The hard karma hit him, not physically, but psychologically. Voss was a man who thrived on control and dominance. Now he had to ask permission to use the toilet. He had to eat food that was barely recognizable. But the worst part was the mail. He received hundreds of letters, not hate mail, that he could have dismissed. These were letters from his victims. One read, "Dear Harlan, do you remember me? You planted meth in my car. I lost my job. I lost my custody rights to my daughter. I've been working at a warehouse trying to rebuild my life. I saw you on TV crying. I just wanted you to know I slept through the night for the first time in years, knowing you were in a cage." Voss read them in his cell, the silence pressing in on him. He wasn't the king of Shelby County anymore. He was inmate 89402. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. The video, the planted drugs, the ballistics, the financial records. It was a mountain of guilt. Voss pleaded guilty to avoid a life sentence. He was sentenced to many years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The final twist of karma came on his first day at the designated federal penitentiary. He was being processed in, stripped of his street clothes, shivering and humiliated. The guard processing him was a large black man with a military bearing. The guard looked at Voss's paperwork. He looked at the former deputy. "Harlan Voss," the guard said. "I heard about you." Voss tried to muster some of his old arrogance. "Yeah, I was a cop. Watch your back." The guard smiled. It was a cold smile. "I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy for many years, Voss. I served with Naval Special Warfare Group 2. You tried to frame 2 of my brothers." Voss went pale. "Don't worry," the guard said, tossing a rough wool blanket at him. "We don't break the law in here. We follow the rules, and I'm going to make sure you follow every single rule. To the letter, every single day, for the next many years. Welcome to your new command, Deputy." Back in Virginia Beach, life returned to a semblance of normal for Reid and Darius. They were back in the team room, prepping for a deployment. The viral fame was annoying. People bought them drinks at bars, asked for selfies, but they deflected it with humility. Admiral Harlan called them into his office a month after the incident. The room was quiet, filled with the scent of old books and sea salt. "At ease," Harlan said, looking out the window at the grey Atlantic Ocean. "How are you boys holding up?" "Good, sir," Reid said, ready to get back to work. "Good." Harlan turned. "Because the world doesn't stop just because one bad cop got caught. But I want you to know something. Sir? Kai asked. You maintained discipline, Harlan said, a rare look of pride on his face. You had the skills to end that situation on the side of the road violently. You could have disarmed him. You could have hurt him. But you chose the harder path. You chose the law. That restraint is what makes you warriors, not just killers. He tossed a folder on the desk. The governor of Georgia sent this. It's a formal apology and a confirmation. Because of your arrest and the subsequent investigation, 142 wrongful convictions in Shelby County have been overturned. 142 people are going home to their families because you two endured a night in a cell. Reid picked up the folder. He looked at Kai. They didn't smile, but a look of deep satisfaction passed between them. That's a good mission outcome, sir, Reid said. Damn straight. Harlan nodded. Now get out of here. You have a plane to catch at 0600. Wheels up. Aye, sir. They walked out of the Admiral's office, down the pristine hallway of the command building. They walked with the easy grace of men who knew exactly who they were. They didn't need badges to prove their worth. They didn't need to bully people to feel strong. As they stepped out into the Virginia sunshine, Kai adjusted his sunglasses. Yeah, next time we drive to Georgia, let's fly. Reid laughed, clapping his friend on the shoulder. Agreed. While Deputy Harlan Voss was adjusting to the grim reality of federal prison, the fire he had sparked in Shelby County was turning into an inferno. The arrest of 2 Navy SEALs had been the catalyst, but the investigation that followed revealed a rot so deep it threatened to collapse the entire local government. The Department of Justice appointed a special prosecutor from Atlanta, a woman named Sophia Ross, known in legal circles as the Butcher for dismantling organized crime rings. Ross didn't just want convictions, she wanted a total purge. She brought in forensic accountants and a team of seasoned FBI agents to dissect Shelby County. The first domino to fall was Sheriff Ryder. Ryder tried to paint himself as an ignorant administrator, a victim of his deputies. But Ross found the ledger hidden in a safety deposit box. It detailed a decade of seizure splits. 40% of every dollar seized in drug busts went directly into Ryder's pocket. The hard karma hit during a televised town hall meeting. Ryder stood at the podium, sweating under the lights, attempting to reassure terrified citizens. I have served this county for many years, Ryder declared. I am a victim of betrayal just as much as you are. At that moment, the back doors flew open. It wasn't the Navy this time. It was the FBI. Agent Kane walked up the center aisle, flanked by 4 federal marshals, holding a warrant high for the cameras. Sheriff Ryder, Kane announced, his voice booming. You are under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to deprive citizens of civil rights. Ryder panicked. In a pathetic display, he tried to bolt for the side exit, only to be tackled by a marshal. The image of the sheriff being dragged out in handcuffs, his expensive toupee slipping off, became the scandal's second viral sensation. The cleansing didn't stop there. Ross turned her gaze to Judge Calloway. The octogenarian judge announced his retirement, hoping to ride off with his full pension. But Ross uncovered a sickening cash for kids scheme. Calloway had been receiving kickbacks from a private juvenile detention center for every teenager he sentenced. On the day Calloway was set to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award at his country club, Ross unsealed the indictment. Calloway was arrested in his tuxedo. His assets, including his estate and vintage car collection, were seized to pay restitution. The man who had judged others for many years would spend his final days in a prison geriatric ward, destitute and disgraced. The final blow. While the criminal courts exacted their price, Reid Cole and Darius delivered the final hammer blow in civil court. Represented by a coalition of top-tier Navy JAG and civil rights attorneys, they sued Shelby County not just for damages, but for systemic reform. The trial was a spectacle. When the jury returned, the verdict was a bankruptcy-level event, $15 million in damages. But the true twist came on the courthouse steps. Standing before the media, holding the massive check, Darius took the microphone. "We didn't do this for the payday," Kai said, his voice thick with emotion. "We did this for the people who didn't have an admiral coming to save them." He ripped the check in half. The crowd gasped. "We are donating the entire settlement," Kai announced. "Half will go to the Shelby County Legal Defense Fund to provide lawyers for those who cannot afford them. The other half will establish a scholarship fund for the children of families destroyed by Judge Calloway." The silence that followed broke into a roar of applause. Reid and Kai had not just defeated the corrupt system, they had replaced it. Highway 9 is different now. The peeling billboard is gone, replaced by a sign. "Welcome to Shelby County, home of the Reid Cole Legal Center." A new sheriff's deputy sits in a cruiser. He sees a car speeding 62 in a 55. He pulls them over. "Good evening, ma'am," he says politely. "The speed drops on this curve. It's dangerous. I'm giving you a warning. Drive safe. No search, no intimidation. Just a public servant." As he walks back to his cruiser, he glances at a laminated photo taped to his dashboard. It's a picture of two Navy SEALs standing tall in their dress whites. It's a reminder that authority is a privilege. Silence is not weakness. And somewhere out in the dark, the hammer is always watching. This story of Deputy Voss serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly power can curdle into tyranny. But more importantly, it is a testament to the power of discipline and brotherhood. Reid Cole and Darius didn't need to use violence to win. They used the truth. They proved that while a corrupt badge might dominate a dark highway for a moment, it cannot withstand the light of justice. The hard karma that befell Voss, Ryder, and Calloway was a restoration of balance, proving that no one is above the law. Hit that like button if you think Deputy Voss got what was coming to him. Share this video with someone who needs to see real karma in action, and subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story about justice, survival, and the moments when the good guys finally win. I'm your channel name, and I'll see you in the next one.